1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, yummy.
Are you ready?
Beef Wellington. Today we're going to be making beef Wellington, and you need to start by chopping up the garlic and mushrooms. All the mushrooms are inside of here, and so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take some, if you have fresh thyme, that would be my preference, but I couldn't find any in the market, so I'm just going to use some dry thyme. I'm just going to sprinkle some thyme inside of here, maybe about 1 teaspoon, and then I'm going to do the same thing with salt, pepper, and some salt. We're just going to stir this up. You want to cook it up until it's quite soft, dark in color. It won't be as bright, but quite dark and soft and mushy. And then we'll set it to the side to cool down because we're going to wrap our meat in this after it's cooled. You can also have the option of adding in about a half of a red onion. I'm just going to add that in as well. And then continue to cook this just until all the mushrooms are dried out and the onions are nice and caramelized. So the mushrooms, onion, and the herbs have all finished up cooking. So I'm just going to take it off the stove and place it in a bowl to cool down before I wrap my meat with it. It's now time to prepare the beef tenderloin. So I'm going to just take a little bit of salt and pepper and season the meat first. Okay. And then you want to rub all of the salt and pepper all over the meat. So I just washed my hands after rubbing the salt and pepper on it, and I've turned my frying pan on with about 1 or 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and you can see it's getting hot. I put a few slivers of garlic in there, that's optional, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to sear all the different sides of this beef tenderloin. So we're just going to pop that inside, and that's going to lock in the flavor. So we're just going to turn this and sear all the sides, and then we'll take it off the heat before we wrap it up inside of our puff pastry. Alright, that looks good. So I've just seared all the different sides so it's no longer pink but brown on all the sides. I'm just going to set it back out onto my red chopping board here. And then I'm going to take about a tablespoon of whole grain mustard and dump it on here. I like the Dijon whole grain mustard, but if you don't have this, you can just use regular mustard as well. And then I'm just going to take a pastry brush, and I want to coat the whole thing in some Dijon mustard. And then we're just going to let this cool down a little bit so that we can wrap it without melting our puff pastry. So I've let the beef just cool down and any juices run out that were still in the meat. And I've taken a piece of cling film or Glad wrap and just place it down on my chopping board here. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my prosciutto, I'm gonna lay it out on top of the cling film, like so. Make sure you remove all the pieces of plastic. And you're gonna wanna overlap them. And this is gonna help you to wrap up the mushroom and onion mix that we made earlier as we wrap up the beef. You're gonna probably want about 4 pieces wide for the 500-gram piece that I have. Now, your piece might be longer, might be shorter, but basically you just want it big enough that you can wrap up the meat. So, it's 3. And make sure you overlap it by about halfway. Now I'm just gonna take my mushroom and I'm gonna cover the whole space. Now I'm leaving just like a thumb mark from the end so that can wrap right over and seal nicely. So just make sure it's evenly spaced out like you can see here. Then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna take our piece of beef and place that over top. I'll just put those extra pieces of garlic that were in the frying pan on top here. Make sure I get all that garlic and mustard seed inside of here as well. So if you have some still on your chopping board, just add it in. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the cling film up and I'm going to wrap it. Make sure you hold it in place as you go ahead and turn. And you want to make sure that you're going to wrap the whole thing. So I feel like I need to adjust this just a little bit. I'm going to add in one more piece for the height wise. And I'm going to adjust because I see here that I have not quite as much on the top as I would like. So I'm just going to adjust that over, so that I can make sure that I wrap up the whole piece of beef. Again, leaving just an edge at the top that doesn't have anything. If you have a little bit on the excess, it's gonna wrap on the edges anyway, so that's good. There we go. Now I see it wraps up a lot better. Just gonna peel this back ever so slightly so that the piece of ham can attach to this piece here. Pull it towards you, and then you want to make sure you wrap it all up. Grab the edges of the cling film, and then what you can do is just roll it. As you roll it, it will tighten it up into a nice parcel that you can then take, and then we're going to place this in the fridge for about half an hour to 1 hour to firm up. And then we're gonna place it into our puff pastry next. Make sure you put it on a plate so that if there's any drippings or anything from the juices from the thing, it's not gonna leak all over your fridge. So our beef has had some time to chill in the fridge and wrapped up. I've now just got some frozen puff pastry that I bought at the grocery store. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna open it up, and you're gonna wanna carefully peel off one sheet. Lay that down, and then you're gonna need to unwrap your beef tenderloin very carefully, and then you're gonna wanna place it in the center of the puff pastry, and then we're going to roll it up. Now this one, if it's not quite big enough, you're gonna need to get 2 sheets, okay? So this one's quite large, so I'm gonna need 2 sheets. For the second sheet, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna cut it in half. And I'm gonna lay that over the bottom part of my pastry. And I don't want it to have this plastic on, so I'm gonna remove this. And then I'm going to fold this up and make sure this is right in the center so you can wrap it up like a present. So you may need a little bit of egg wash, so you can take a bowl, grab an egg, crack it inside, and then you can whisk that up. And the egg will act like a glue. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of egg on the edge here to help stick it to the pastry. Very carefully, you want to remove the plastic. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And you got to remember, this is the bottom, so it doesn't have to look as pretty as the top. Hopefully it will look. And then what you're gonna do is the edges you're gonna fold in like so. And then just like a present, you're gonna fold it in on the corners. And then you might want to get some egg wash again, so that you know it's gonna stick well. And then I'm just gonna fold this up. It's best if you can pull it enough that you can just tuck it underneath so it kind of will hold it in place when I place it onto my parchment paper. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. So again, fold the corners in like a present. Get some egg wash. You don't want it too excessive, the egg wash. And then again, just take that and pull that up and give it a little bit of a pull so it sits underneath. And then you're gonna tip it upside down so you have the beautiful top here. And then you're gonna go ahead, take a piece of parchment paper, put it on a tray or on your oven tray there like this. Place it on top. Make sure it's molded nicely to cover your whole beef tenderloin. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a nice egg wash on here. And then I always like to let the egg wash dry for a minute and then do a second one to make it nice and golden that way. So I'm just gonna let this dry, air dry for about 2 to 5 minutes, and then I'll do one more egg wash. If you want to get creative, what you can do is you can take a sheet and just cut some little slices in alternating pattern, something like this. And then what we can do is we can take it and we can lay it over top, and as we open it up, it'll leave these giant holes to make it look quite pretty over the top of my pastry. So I'm just gonna try this here to be a little bit more decorative, a little bit fancier. I'm just pulling it down to the edges. And you want the holes to line up something like so. And then any extra pastry we can just cut off. is purely a decorative thing. It's not a requirement, but I thought, oh, I had that extra piece of half pastry that we cut when we used it at the bottom. So I thought, why not make the most of it and try to use it up. I'm gonna take my knife and I'm just gonna trim off any excess. And then I'm gonna do my last egg wash. There we have it. So just doing the final egg wash, like I said earlier, all over the surface. And again, you don't have to do this pattern top. I don't even know if it's gonna turn out, but we're gonna give it a shot. It will be great either way. Another option you can do is, if you have some pastries, you can take the back, don't take the sharp part of the knife, but the back of the knife, and you could score it with a pattern. You could put letters on it, or just a one line after one line to make it like a curved pattern to make it decorative as well. But since I've done it this way, I'm gonna just leave it like this. Well, it's ready to go in the oven. I'm just going to put a little bit of some salt for seasoning on the surface. And then I've got my thermometer out so that I can check the temperature as it cooks. We're gonna bake it anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes, depending on how you want it cooked. If you want it to be rare, you're gonna cook it to 60 degrees Celsius. If you want it medium, anywhere between 60 to 65. And a well done will be over 70 degrees Celsius, okay? And you're gonna make sure you take your temperature probe and you're gonna put it right into the center of the meat, not just the outside. So like I said, we're gonna bake it now, 190 degrees Celsius, and we're gonna check the temperature after 20 minutes and then keep checking it to see where we're at. So after testing it, it wasn't quite hot enough. So what I did is just popped it back in the oven, and I actually turned the oven up to 200 degrees Celsius. And it's now at 64 degrees Celsius and still climbing slowly. So it is where I want it to be. I like my steak medium rare. So around 63, 64 degrees Celsius is just perfect for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it open and show you the inside. So I just took a serrated bread knife to cut it in half. And as you can see in here, it's perfectly cooked. And I'm just gonna go ahead and serve that up for dinner. You can go ahead and cut it into multiple slices or serve it as a large piece, however you want.